A Valediction Forbidding Mourning is a great poetic achievement. It's not an easy poem to understand, especially in the third and fourth stanzas, where you've got to have a good understanding of medieval beliefs. So from this point of view, in terms of complexity of images, it is typical of Donne's poetic style. But it is still atypical because, for example, the use of strictly regular meter is not the usual way Donne writes his major poems. And for example, extending an image over several stanzas is really rare in Donne's poetic works. But whatever features it might have, this is a poem English-speaking people can take pride in, and they do, at least those people who fully understand it. But let me make it clear that this lesson is mostly geared towards non-native students of English literature, and therefore some words and phrases obvious to the English or American student will also be explained. So, if you are a native speaker watching this video, please bear with me for a while. Donne wrote Valediction Forbidding Mourning in 1611, just before traveling to Europe, that is France and Low Countries. And I hope you remember that this year falls within the second period of his life. Donne, a poor, unemployed man whose lyrical poetry is mostly addressed to his wife. His first biographer says that Donne had bad feelings about leaving his wife alone, which was verified later when Anne gave birth to a dead and stillborn baby in his absence. This is why the tone of the poem is so solemn and serious. However, let me remind you that historical and biographical considerations such as this one should always be handled with much care. Otherwise, it might break or kill the soul of great works of art. Here we have a lyrical speaker who is about to set out on a journey, talking to his beloved, asking her not to cry after her when he leaves. There will be no absence at all, because they remain spiritually unified during the trip, and even physically reunified after the man returns. Valediction is a formal speech or poem in which someone says goodbye. Literally it means saying goodbye. Dict means to say, valley means goodbye, both of them from Latin. Forbidding means not allowing. Mourning with you is the sadness you show because you have lost a loved one. Now you must be able to imagine what a valediction forbidding mourning is. A goodbye poem saying, "Don't cry after me." As far as I can remember, there are 3 other valedictions in Donne's Songs and Sonnets. Songs and Sonnets is his book of lyrics, you know. But this one is the best known. As virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to the souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, "The breath goes now," and some say no, so let us melt and make no noise. No tear floods nor sigh tempests move, 'twere profanation of our joys to tell the laity our love. Let's look at the words of the first 2 paragraphs. A paragraph is called stanza in the poem, by the way. A virtuous man is a man who behaves in a good and moral way. Pass away means to die. Mildly here means gently and quietly. Whisper is speaking in a low voice, when you speak but your vocal cords don't vibrate. I'm whispering now. Whilst or while is a word we use when we compare and contrast 2 different things and we want to show the differences. Imagine that an old man is on his deathbed, a man who has always been a nice man all his life. He is certain that in the next world great things are going to happen to him. That's why he dies in a gentle way, and he persuades his own soul to leave the body. Notice that he doesn't shout his words, he whispers his words. Go away. And notice how close, how intimate the body and the soul are. Goodbye, my soul. Goodbye, my body. Now, the word whilst signals a contrast here. His sad friends are kind of arguing. Some of them say, he's already dead. But others disagree and say, no, not yet. Here, the first stanza comes to an end, but not the idea. The idea extends to the next paragraph. So let us melt and make no noise. So that was the story. Let us be like the virtuous man and his soul, and separate quietly. The way a cube of ice, for example, melts and expands, it separates, and yet there is no noise. Notice that this idea is also reinforced by the se sounds and the the sounds in the poem. As virtuous men pass smiley away and whisper to the souls to go to the end. More than a dozen of these sounds produce a soothing, pacifying effect and support the concept of being calm and quiet, just like our virtuous man. Those of you who are interested in knowing more about the technical points of this poem or any other poem, I recommend that you watch my lesson about the nature of metaphor, where I have discussed the different ways a metaphor appears in a poem, the different little things that constitute it, different names given to it, the metaphoric concepts that are without name in English literature, and so on. But this is not the right place to mention these technical terms, as we already have a lot to discuss. No tear floods, nor sigh tempests move. Now, from the previous line, we can add a few words. Let us melt and make no noise, and let us make no tear floods and move no sigh tempests. It is very important to be able to read a line correctly by putting jumbled words in the right order, because poets often make a mess of grammar. This is their job, and as a reader you should be able to clean up after them. Tear floods and sigh tempests. By the opening years of the 17th century, poets had repeated these metaphors, known as Petrarchan metaphors. They had repeated them so often that they almost turned them into dead, nauseating metaphors. Yes, tears are like floods because both of them flow like water, and sighs are like storms, of course when it's exaggerated, because both are violent currents of air. But the credit belongs to the first poets who discovered them, not the dozens and dozens of poets who wore them out. Now, notice the clever use of these two cliched metaphors. The speaker in the poem uses a fresh, innovative and powerful metaphor to support his idea, the image of the virtuous man, and some disgusting, worn-out cliches to show what he dislikes. He dislikes crying and showing signs of grief. So this is the way tear floods and sigh tempests are used in the poem. Profanation comes from a religious context. It means showing disrespect for holy things. So it means that our love is a holy thing and should not be treated with profanation and disrespect. Laity is another religious word. It means the non-clergy, non-priest members of a church. From this word we have layman in English. Let me explain it in layman's terms, that is, in simple language. To the medieval man, to be a priest was synonymous with being closer to God. To be a layman meant being in a lower rank in the hierarchy of the universe. Now, if we reveal our heavenly love to common people who can't understand it by weeping and crying when we are parting, you know what? We will be disrespecting and ridiculing our extremely holy love. By the way, considering love as a religion is a widespread notion in different world literatures. Why is the phrase "it were" changed to "twere" with an apostrophe in this bit of the poem? Because Donne is doing his best to keep the regular rhythm of the poem. "Twere" is one syllable and "it were" is two. Each line is a tetrameter, which means there are 8 syllables in a line. In this poem, Donne has done a lot to have no more than 8 syllables in every line. For example, instead of "the other," he uses th, the, plus apostrophe, pronounced "thother," which is 2 syllable, not 3. Even a word like expansion in the middle of the poem, in the 6th stanza, is often pronounced expansion by staunch supporters of regularity. But do you think it is really necessary to go that far? Well, not actually. You know, in English poetry, we use lots of do's and dids and things of that sort. This is not for emphasis as it is today. This is mostly for, this is a poetic way of expressing things. You say, "I do go" means "I go," or "he did go" means "he went." This is just a more poetic way of saying things.